Right now, your mind may be replaying conversations you wish had gone differently. Or perhaps your thoughts are tracing the outline of tomorrow, trying to measure the weight of the tasks waiting for you. Maybe you came here because something inside you is tired, not just the kind of physical exhaustion that sleep can fix, but the deeper, quieter fatigue of trying to prove that you are enough. You have been carrying the architecture of your life like a heavy, unfinished building, constantly checking the foundation, worried about the loose ends, and fearing that if you stop working for even a moment, everything might collapse. It is quiet in this room now. The air is cool, and the moonlight is resting softly against your window. You can feel the weight of your body sinking into the mattress, the fabric of your blanket offering a gentle, steady presence against your skin. The world outside has slowed its pace, and here in this small, sacred space, you do not have to be anyone. You do not have to be productive, or strong, or certain. There is nothing to solve tonight. There is nowhere you need to go. You are safe enough to soften. Maybe you have tried to be strong for so long that even this silence feels unfamiliar. It is okay to be tired. It is okay to set down the tools of your worry for a little while. You are not broken, and the exhaustion you feel is not a failure of character. It is simply the natural result of holding on too tightly to a life that was meant to be lived, not managed. Tonight, we will not force the mind to be silent. We will not battle your thoughts or try to suppress the things that weigh on your heart. Instead, we will learn how to stop following every thought as if it were a command, and how to stop treating your own existence as a problem that needs to be fixed. The mind does not become peaceful because you defeat your thoughts. It becomes peaceful when you stop treating every thought as if it were the truth. You have spent so much time trying to weave the perfect tapestry of your life, pulling at the threads, tying knots, and fearing the frayed edges. But there is a different way to understand the pattern. There is a way to look at the work of your life without needing it to be finished, or flawless, or defended. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, let your shoulders drop away from your ears. You don't have to do this perfectly. Even the act of noticing that you are holding tension is a form of wisdom. Just let your jaw unclench. Let your hands relax against the bed. You are not here to improve yourself. You are here to remember the quiet that exists beneath all the movement. You see, we often live as if we are standing before a great, complex loom, tasked with weaving a masterpiece before the sun rises. We worry about the tension of the thread, the pattern of the design, and the inevitable way the threads seem to fray or snap in our hands. We look at the uneven patches and call them mistakes. We look at the gaps in the fabric and call them failures. But what if the weaver's loom was never meant to be a place of judgment? What if the beauty of the tapestry was not in its completion, but in the simple, rhythmic act of passing the shuttle back and forth, trusting the process even when the thread is thin? We are going to walk through this together, slowly. There is no urgency. If your mind wanders to tomorrow, that is perfectly fine. You don't need to fight it. Just notice where it has gone, and like a leaf drifting on a quiet stream, let yourself drift back to the sound of your own breathing. You are safe here. You are understood. You are allowed to stop running. There was once a mountain pass where a weaver lived in a small stone-walled hut. This weaver was known for the intricate, beautiful patterns that emerged from her loom, yet she moved with such startling slowness that those who traveled through the pass often wondered if she ever finished anything at all. She would sit for hours, sometimes days, simply watching the way the light shifted across the threads, or listening to the sound of the wind moving through the valley. To the outside world, she seemed idle. To the apprentices who came to her, seeking the secret of her craft, she seemed to be waiting for something that never arrived. One evening, a young student who had traveled many miles to learn the art of the perfect weave arrived at the hut. He was exhausted, his mind filled with the pressures of his own life, his hands calloused from the desperate, frantic speed with which he had tried to master his own loom. He entered the hut and found the weaver sitting in the dim amber light of a single oil lamp, staring at a shuttle in her hand. It was an ordinary wooden tool, but the thread attached to it was frayed, uneven, and held together by several rough, messy knots. The student did not wait for an invitation. He stood in the doorway, his chest tight with the anxiety of his own unfinished work, and asked, "How can you sit here in the quiet when the world is so full of work? How can you look at a thread as ruined as this one and find peace?" He pointed to the frayed shuttle, his voice trembling with the weight of everything he felt he had failed to accomplish. "My own work is not good enough. My life is not where it should be. I am always behind. I am always chasing a design I can never quite capture. Tell me how to fix it." The weaver did not look up immediately. She continued to hold the shuttle, her fingers tracing the rough texture of the frayed thread as if it were a precious, sacred thing. She listened not just to his words, but to the rhythm of his breathing, the jagged, shallow rhythm of a person who had forgotten how to rest. Finally, she looked toward the dark mountain pass outside the window, where the night had begun to settle over the peaks. "You speak of fixing," she said, her voice soft and steady, like the sound of water moving over smooth stones. "But you are trying to fix a life that is still being woven. Come here. Sit, not to work, but to simply be." The student hesitated. Every fiber of his being wanted to keep moving, to keep proving his worth, to keep searching for the solution that would finally make him feel adequate. But the stillness of the room was infectious. Slowly, he walked over and sat on the dirt floor, his back against the cool stone wall. He felt the tension in his shoulders begin to ripple outward, the first sign of a body that was finally being allowed to stop. The weaver handed him the shuttle, the one with the frayed, uneven thread. "Hold this," she whispered, "and tell me what you see. In a moment, this story will show us something even quieter. Something that touches on the very reason we feel so anxious when we are alone with our own thoughts. But for now, just feel the weight of your own body against the bed. You have arrived. There is nowhere else you need to be. Just breathe. You are enough, exactly as you are in this moment of quiet." The young student sat motionless on the cool, uneven stone, the shuttle still resting in his palm. It felt heavy, not because of its wood or its weight, but because of what it represented. The constant grinding pressure to produce something perfect, the fear that without a finished piece of cloth, he was merely a loose, disconnected string in the wind. The mountain air outside the weaver's hut was thin and crisp, carrying the faint, earthy scent of damp pine needles and the distant, rhythmic rushing of a glacial stream. The oil lamp flickered, casting long, dancing shadows against the rough-hewn walls, and for the first time in years, the student realized he was not trying to outrun anything. He was simply sitting. The weaver watched him, her eyes clouded with age but sharp, with a stillness that seemed to draw the very restlessness out of the room. She reached out and placed her hand over his, resting her fingers briefly on the frayed thread that trailed from the shuttle. It was rough, uneven, and held together by awkward knots where he had tried to force the thread to mend itself. In the village from which he had come, the looms were always clattering. There, speed was considered a virtue, and a snagged thread was seen as a character flaw. He had been taught that the only way to prove his value was to ensure that every pass of the shuttle resulted in a flawless line. He had spent his youth terrified of the knots, believing that if he left them, they would unravel the entire design of his life. The weaver finally withdrew her hand and gestured toward the loom standing in the corner. It was made of dark, aged cedar, polished by the touch of many hands over many seasons. It was not a grand or imposing structure. In fact, it looked quite ordinary, covered in a fine layer of dust that caught the golden light of the lamp. She picked up a small, weathered ceramic bowl from a low table, one that was clearly missing a handle and bore a hairline fracture running from the rim to the base. She did not offer to teach him how to weave. Instead, she sat on a woven mat and poured hot water over a few dried leaves in the bowl. As the tea steeped, she watched the steam rise, drifting slowly upward like a soft, quiet thought. She asked him a single question, her voice barely rising above the low hum of the mountain wind outside. She asked him what he thought the thread feared most. The student thought of the tension, the snapping, the fraying, and the inevitable moment when the shuttle would run dry. He spoke of the fear of being unfinished, the fear of the gap between what he had achieved and what he imagined he should be. He told her about the long nights spent awake, mentally reweaving his days, trying to fix the mistakes of the past and secure the patterns of the future. He spoke with a raw, tired honesty, the kind that only emerges when one is finally too exhausted to maintain the mask of competence. The weaver nodded, her expression neither pitying nor impressed. She simply waited until he had emptied his heart of the noise. Then she took the ceramic bowl, the one with the fracture, and held it out to him. She told him a story of a stonecutter who lived on the opposite side of the pass, a man who spent his life trying to carve a perfectly smooth basin from a mountain boulder. He had labored for 20 years, driven by the belief that if he could only make the stone flawless, he would finally find rest. He ignored the moss that grew on the north side, the way the birds nested in the crags, and the way the mountain changed with the seasons. He saw only the roughness of the stone as an enemy to be conquered. One day, after years of intense, singular focus, he struck the boulder with his chisel, and a long, deep crack split the stone from top to bottom. It was not the crack he had intended, it was a mistake, a flaw that rendered the basin useless for his original design. He was devastated. He felt as though the years he had invested had been stolen from him in a single, careless strike. He abandoned the mountain, convinced that he had failed, and lived the rest of his life in the shadow of that bitterness. But the weaver pointed to the crack in the bowl she held. She explained that a different traveler, someone who knew nothing of the stonecutter's ambition, eventually found that split boulder. They saw that the water from the melting snow collected in the crack, and that wild, vibrant flowers had begun to grow in the soil that gathered there. The crack was not a failure of the stone, it was a doorway for life to enter, where there was previously only cold, impenetrable surface. She looked at the student, her gaze steady and kind. "You are like the stonecutter," she said. "You believe that the crack, the uneven thread, the messy knot, the mistake you made yesterday is the end of the work. You are so terrified of the imperfection that you cannot see how the light is actually entering through the very gaps you are trying to seal." The student looked down at the frayed shuttle in his lap. He had spent so long trying to hold the thread perfectly taut that he had forgotten that a thread must have some slack, some space, to be anything at all. He realized that his anxiety was not a sign that he was failing to weave, but a sign that he was fighting the nature of the material itself. The room was so still that he could hear the faint, rhythmic ticking of the cooling wood in the walls. He felt a strange, quiet release in his chest. He did not need to fix the thread. He did not need to hide the knots. They were part of the texture. They were part of the story. He leaned back against the stone wall, letting the shuttle slide from his hand onto the dirt floor. There was no sound when it landed, only a soft, dull thud. For the first time, he was not looking at the unfinished tapestry, but at the light playing on the dust motes in the air, drifting through the room like soft, golden breaths. The need to prove his worth, the frantic, inner clock that had been driving him to work even in his sleep, began to slow. In a moment, we will look at why the mind interprets this need to fix as a form of safety, and how you can begin to loosen your own grip on the threads of your own life. But for now, just let yourself be here, in this quiet, allowing the weight of the day to fall away, just as the shuttle fell from his hand. You are safe enough to rest, and nothing requires your effort tonight. This story is not telling us that we should stop caring about the patterns we weave, or that we should abandon our efforts to live a meaningful life. It is not asking us to become cold or indifferent to the quality of our work. If we were to interpret it that way, we would simply be trading one form of anxiety for another, the anxiety of trying to be perfect for the anxiety of trying to be detached. Instead, the old weaver is showing us something much quieter. She is inviting us to observe the way our own mind interacts with the threads of our existence. Think back to the apprentice in the hut. His suffering did not come from the fact that the thread was frayed or that the shuttle was old. His suffering came from the narrative he had built around those things, the belief that a frayed thread was a moral failing and that a knot was a sign of his own inadequacy. He was living as if his worth was entirely dependent on a perfectly smooth, uninterrupted line. When we feel that we are behind in life, or that we are not enough, we are doing exactly what that young student was doing. We are looking at the rough patches, the places where things did not go according to plan, and we are deciding that these moments disqualify us from peace. We believe that we must hide the knots, that we must smooth over the history of our mistakes before we are allowed to rest. But Buddhist wisdom suggests that this is where the second wound is born. The first wound is life itself, the reality that things break, that threads fray, and that we cannot control the rhythm of every moment. That is simply the nature of existence. It is not inherently painful to have a rough day, or to feel lost, or to experience a setback. The pain only becomes a heavy, suffocating burden when the mind steps in and says, "This should not be happening. I am failing because this is happening. I must fix this immediately or I am not safe." This is the extra weight you have been carrying. It is the effort of trying to build a perfect architecture in a world that is inherently fluid and unfinished. When the Buddha spoke of suffering, he was not suggesting that the world is inherently bad. He was pointing out that our suffering is often a self-inflicted process of resistance. We resist the reality of the present moment because it does not match the image of the perfection we think we need to achieve. We cling to the idea of a flawless tapestry, and because reality is never flawless, we end up feeling constantly inadequate. This does not mean you have to surrender your goals or stop working toward the things that matter to you. It means you can learn to work without the internal demand that everything be perfect right now. You can weave with care, with intention and with effort, while also recognizing that the knots are part of the process. The frayed edges are not failures. They are simply places where you have lived, where you have struggled, and where you have continued to show up despite the difficulty. Imagine if you could look at your own mistakes and your own feelings of being behind not as gaps in your character, but as spaces where the light can enter. What if you stopped judging the progress of your life by a standard that no one else can actually meet? When you hold a thread with too much tension, it snaps. It is the same with your mind. When you hold your own worth with too much tension, constantly checking it, constantly worrying that it is fraying, you lose the ability to experience the grace of the present moment. The peace you are searching for is not a reward for completing the tapestry. It is not waiting for you at the end of the line, when everything is finally smoothed out and perfect. That is the illusion that keeps you awake at night. Peace is found in the way you hold the shuttle tonight. It is found in the permission to be unfinished. You might notice that even as you hear these words, your mind tries to argue. It might say, "But if I stop worrying, I will fail," or "If I don't fix these things, I will never be enough." This is just the sound of the old habit, speaking the voice of the apprentice who is still terrified of the knots. You do not need to fight that voice. You do not need to tell it that it is wrong. Just notice it. See it for what it is. A protective reflex, a misguided attempt to keep you safe from the discomfort of being human. Because you are safe. You are safe enough to let the thread be a little bit messy. You are safe enough to acknowledge that you are tired, and that this exhaustion is not a sign of defeat, but a call to come home to yourself. When we stop adding our own judgment to the experiences of our lives, the pain becomes manageable. It becomes something we can breathe through, rather than something we have to solve. You are not broken because you have struggled. You are not a failure because you are not where you thought you would be. You are a human being in the midst of a complex, beautiful, and ongoing process. The thread is still moving, the shuttle is still passing, but you do not have to hold it with such a desperate, white-knuckled grip. In a moment, we will look at how to gently release that grip, not by letting go of your life, but by letting go of the internal judge that refuses to let you rest. We will explore how to practice this in the quiet of your own mind, even when the pressure feels high. But for now, just let these words settle in the space between your thoughts. You do not have to do anything with this wisdom tonight. You do not have to master it. You only have to listen. And in the listening, let your guard down just a little bit more. Notice the weight of your body again. Feel the softness of the bed beneath you. You have been carrying so much, and here, in this quiet, you are finally allowed to set the load down. There is a profound relief in admitting that you cannot control the outcome of every thread. There is a deep, quiet freedom in accepting that the tapestry of your life will always have its unique, rugged beauty, and that it is enough, exactly as it is in this very moment. You are doing enough. You have done enough. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to stop trying to weave perfection, and simply watch the night air move through the room. This is the first step toward the peace you have been seeking, not the absence of struggle, but the presence of a kinder, more spacious heart that knows it is safe to be unfinished. As you breathe, let your heart soften into that truth. You are not the mistakes you have made, and you are not the work you have yet to do. You are the awareness that is noticing all of it, and that awareness is already whole. That awareness is already at rest. And as you prepare to move into the deeper practice, know that the path back to yourself is not a long, arduous journey, but a simple return to this moment where you have nothing to prove and everything to experience. Now, let us bring this into the quiet of your own experience, not as a task to be mastered, but as a gentle exploration of the space you inhabit right now. There is nothing to achieve here. You do not need to change your thoughts or force your mind into a state of perfect stillness. If your mind is busy, let it be busy. If it is tired, let it be tired. You are simply here, in this room, on this bed, practicing the art of observing the threads of your own life without needing to pull at them until they break. Take a slow, deep breath in, letting the air fill your lungs completely, and as you exhale, feel your body begin to soften against the mattress. Let your jaw unhinge. Let your shoulders, which have carried the weight of your day, your plans, and your judgments, drop just a little further away from your ears. Your hands, which may still feel the ghost of the shuttle you were holding in our story, can rest openly, palms facing upward, or however feels most natural. You are safe enough to stop holding on now. Bring your attention to the thoughts that are currently moving through your mind. You do not need to look for them. They will present themselves in their own time. Perhaps it is a worry about tomorrow, or a lingering memory of something you think you should have done differently. Whatever it is, do not try to push it away. Do not judge yourself for having it. Imagine instead that this thought is simply a thread, a single strand of silk that has appeared in the air before you. See it clearly. Is it a tight, frayed thread of anxiety? Is it a tangled knot of past regret? Is it a thin, delicate strand of hope for the future? Just watch it. You are the observer of the thread, not the one who must force it into a design. If it feels right, imagine that beside you there lies the weaver's loom, and in your hand you hold the shuttle. But this time, you are not working to complete a masterpiece. You are simply practicing the act of placing. Take that specific thought, that worry, that judgment, that feeling of being behind, and imagine yourself gently, carefully placing it into the shuttle. You are not discarding it, you are acknowledging it. You are giving it a place to rest so that your mind does not have to carry the full weight of it alone. As you place it there, watch how the tension in your own body begins to change. Does your chest feel a little lighter? Does your breathing slow down? You are learning that a thought does not have to be an emergency. It does not have to be a command that demands your immediate action. It is just a strand of your experience. And you are allowed to let it rest for a moment, to let it be held by the stillness of this night. If the mind tries to grab the thought back, if it tells you that you must keep worrying, that you must keep reweaving the problem to find a solution, simply notice that too. Recognize the urge to control as just another strand. You can place that urge into the shuttle as well. There is no need to fight it. Every time you notice yourself gripping the thread, you have an opportunity to practice the release. Perhaps you find that you are holding on to a long, heavy rope of self-criticism. It feels so solid, so real, like it is part of who you are, but notice the texture of it. Is it really you, or is it just a story you have been repeating for a long time? Breathe into the space around that rope. You do not have to cut it, you do not have to destroy it. You only need to see it for what it is, a thought. A memory, a pattern, and choose, just for tonight, to set it down. Let the shuttle on the floor beside you. Let the threads remain as they are, uneven, and unfinished. There is a deep, profound beauty in the unmade. The night air in your room is cool and still, and it does not ask anything of you. The moonlight on your wall is not trying to be brighter or clearer, it is enough as it is. Can you offer yourself that same grace? Can you let your own life be enough for these next few hours? You have spent so much energy trying to justify your existence through your efforts, but you exist before the effort. You are here, breathing, alive, and that is the only foundation you need. If you find that your mind wanders back to the noise, if the threads begin to tangle again, do not be discouraged. The weaver in our story did not lose her peace because the thread frayed. She found her wisdom because she knew how to return to the breath. Simply notice where your attention has gone, and gently, with as much kindness as you would offer a tired friend, bring it back to the sound of the air moving in and out of your lungs. You might notice that there is a quiet, steady awareness that does not change, regardless of how frayed the threads of your day become. That awareness is the loom itself. It is the space that allows the weaving to happen, the witness that remains when the work is set aside. Rest in that space. Let your thoughts be like the distant sounds outside your window, a soft passing murmur that belongs to the world, but does not need to enter your room. You are doing exactly what you need to be doing. You are resting. You are letting go. You are allowing the architecture of your internal world to breathe. There is no good way to meditate and no bad way to be. There is only the willingness to show up and be gentle with yourself. As you lie here, feel the support of the bed beneath you. Every part of you is being held. You do not need to hold yourself up. You do not need to support the weight of your worries. Let the bed hold you. Let the night hold you. Let the quiet hold you. In a moment, we will look at a second story, one that reveals a deeper layer of this release, showing us what happens when we stop trying to dictate the outcome of our lives entirely. But for now, just stay here, in this pocket of calm. Let the feeling of not enough drift away, like a shadow losing its edge in the deepening dark. You are exactly where you are meant to be. You are safe enough to stop. You are enough. Years later, when the apprentice had become the one who tended the mountain hut, he found himself facing a challenge that the old weaver had not explicitly warned him about. The seasons had turned many times, and his own hands, once desperate and hurried, had grown steady and calm. He had learned the rhythm of the loom, the way the silk responded to patience, and the way the mind could be invited to settle. Yet, he still carried the internal echo of his old urgency. He still felt that quiet, persistent pull to make the work faster, to ensure the pattern was more intricate, and to prove that he was worthy of the space he occupied. One autumn evening, a woman came to the hut. She was a master of the garden, someone whose name was whispered with reverence in the villages below. She carried with her a deep, restless sorrow, a weight that seemed to press against her shoulders, as if she were carrying the very stones of the mountain. She had come not to learn how to weave, but because she felt she had lost the ability to grow anything at all. Her garden, once a place of vibrant, flowing life, had become a tangle of withered branches and choked soil. She believed she had failed, and in her failure, she felt she had forfeited her right to peace. She sat before the apprentice, and without a word, she placed a small wooden box on the table. Inside was a collection of dried, brittle seeds. They were the last remnants of a rare mountain flower she had spent decades trying to cultivate. She had failed to make them bloom, and she had spent the entire season trying to force the soil to accept them, exhausting herself in a frenzy of pruning, watering, and rearranging, until the garden was as tired and broken as her own heart. The apprentice looked at the seeds. They were small, unassuming, and seemed entirely lifeless. He looked at the woman's hands, which were clenched so tightly that her knuckles were white. She was waiting for him to tell her how to fix the soil, how to change the climate, how to perform the miracle that would turn these brittle things into life. She was looking for a technique, a secret, a way to control the outcome, so that she could finally feel that her work had been enough. The apprentice walked to the corner of the hut and picked up a rusted iron watering can. He went to the basin outside, filled it with cold, clear mountain water, and returned. He did not speak. He did not offer words of comfort or promises of success. He simply placed the iron can in the center of the table and sat in the silence with her. Hours passed. The sun set behind the jagged peaks, and the room began to fill with the deep, cool blue of twilight. The woman's breathing, at first jagged and tense, began to hitch, as if she were trying to hold back a storm. She kept staring at the seeds, her mind undoubtedly replaying every step of her gardening, every decision she had made, every reason she had convinced herself she was a failure. She was in the middle of her own internal forest of overthinking, lost in the shadows of what she felt she should have been. Finally, she broke the silence. She asked him why the seeds would not grow for her. She asked him what she had done wrong, and she asked him to show her how to correct it, so that she could go back and try one last time. Her voice was thin, brittle as the seeds themselves. The apprentice reached out and took the lid off the wooden box. He didn't look at the seeds. Instead, he looked at the woman. He asked her if she had ever noticed that the mountain did not ask the flowers to bloom on a schedule. He asked her if she had ever considered that her garden was not a test of her value, but a space that existed for its own sake, regardless of what it produced. She looked at him with a mix of confusion and anger. She wanted a solution. She wanted to know how to force the life back into the dormant things. The apprentice stood up and walked to the door, opening it wide to the vast, dark expanse of the mountain night. He pointed to the forest below, where the trees were shedding their leaves, preparing for the long, quiet sleep of winter. He told her that he, too, had once sat in this very room, believing that he was a broken weaver because his thread was frayed. He had believed that his value was tied to the finished cloth. He had spent years trying to weave a tapestry that would prove his worth, only to find that the more he pulled at the threads, the more he lost himself. He explained that the garden was not an extension of her identity, but a conversation she was having with the earth. By trying to dictate the outcome, she had stopped the conversation entirely. She had stopped listening to what the soil needed, and instead, She had only been listening to the voice in her head that said she was not enough. He walked back to the table and picked up one of the brittle seeds. He held it in his open palm. He told her that to grow, a seed must first be allowed to be nothing. It must be allowed to be quiet, to be still, to be entirely unproducing. It had to be forgotten for a time, so that the hidden life within could find the strength to emerge. He didn't tell her to go back and work harder. He didn't tell her to try a different fertilizer or a different layout. He simply asked her to take the box and leave it in the darkest, coolest corner of her garden, shed not to plant them, not to worry about them, but to leave them alone for the entire winter. He asked her to promise him that for those months she would not visit the shed, she would not think about the seeds, and she would not judge the state of her garden. The woman was silent for a long time. The challenge was immense. For someone who had defined her existence by the labor of her hands, the idea of doing nothing felt like a kind of death. But as she sat there in the quiet of the hut, she felt the apprentice's calm, a calm that didn't come from success, but from the refusal to be moved by the pressure of enough. She saw that he was not judging her, and she felt the exhaustion of her own struggle finally begin to break. She took the box, closed the lid, and let out a long, shuddering breath. She didn't become a master of the garden in that moment. She didn't suddenly understand all the mysteries of the earth. But she did something she had never done before. She stopped. She stopped the internal chase. She stood up, bowed to the apprentice, and for the first time in years, she walked out into the cool night air without a plan, without a worry, and without the need to prove a single thing. The apprentice watched her go. He knew that the seeds might never grow, and he knew that she might struggle again when the spring came. But he also knew that for this night, she was free. She had experienced the profound, quiet power of simply putting the work down. In a moment we will look at how this shift, the simple, courageous act of choosing not to force reality, changes the very way we live our lives in the modern world. But for now, just feel the weight of your own hands. They are not here to manipulate the world, or to weave a perfect life, or to fix the frayed ends of your past. They are here to rest. Let them be heavy. Let the air in your room cool your skin, and let the darkness outside your window be a mirror for the stillness that is beginning to unfold inside you. You are enough, even in the winter of your own life, even in the times when nothing seems to be blooming. You are the gardener, the garden, and the rest that both require. When we look closely at the way we experience our own lives, we often find that our greatest exhaustion does not come from the work we are doing, but from the relentless, internal effort of trying to control the uncontrollable. Think of the garden in our story. The woman was not merely pulling weeds, she was pulling at her own sense of worth, trying to force the soil of her life to produce the results she thought would make her enough. This is the core of our struggle. We take the inevitable difficulties of being human, the loss, the change, the mistakes, the uncertainty, and we wrap them in a thick, suffocating layer of judgment. The Buddha often spoke of this as a kind of dual injury. The first pain is life itself. It is the simple, honest reality that things do not always go as we planned. A thread frays, a season fails, a conversation turns sour. This is the nature of existence. It is not personal, it is not a sign of failure, and it is not a symptom of a broken character. It is just the way the world moves. But the second pain, the one that keeps us awake at night, the one that makes us feel like we are falling behind, is the pain we add ourselves. It is the narrative that says, because this happened, I am not good enough, or if I cannot fix this, I am a failure. This second pain is where we get trapped. We fear that if we do not judge ourselves, if we do not stay in a state of constant, anxious vigilance, everything will fall apart. We believe that our suffering is a necessary tax we must pay to ensure we are doing the right thing. But the truth is, this self-judgment does not protect us. It only drains the very energy we need to live well. When you treat every difficult emotion as an emergency, you lose the ability to sit with it, to learn from it, and eventually to let it pass. Consider the habit of rehearsing the future. We believe that if we can just imagine every possible mistake before it happens, we will be safe. But the mind, in its attempt to protect us, actually pulls the future into the present, making us feel the anxiety of a disaster that hasn't occurred. We are not living in our beds. In this quiet, safe room, we are living in the projection of a tomorrow that doesn't exist yet. We are spending our precious, limited energy on a shadow, and the same is true for the past. We replay our mistakes not to learn, but to punish ourselves, trying to solve problems that were closed long ago. When you notice yourself doing this, when you feel that familiar, tight constriction in your chest, or the mental urge to fix, change, or apologize, try to recognize it as a protective reflex that has outlived its purpose. It is the voice of a part of you that is terrified of being enough. It is not a voice you need to listen to, and it is certainly not a voice you need to obey. You can acknowledge that it is there. You can see that it is trying to keep you safe, and then, with great gentleness, you can choose not to follow it. Peace is not the absence of difficulty. Peace is not a state where the garden is always blooming, where the thread never frays, and where the mind never wanders. If you are waiting for a version of your life where there is no struggle, you are waiting for a dream. Peace is a different relationship with the difficulty that is already here. It is the capacity to hold the broken bowl, the frayed thread, and the unblooming seed with an open hand instead of a clenched fist. When you stop treating your suffering as an identity, when you stop calling yourself a failure, and instead notice that you are simply experiencing a moment of difficulty, the intensity of the pain shifts. It becomes something you can navigate. It becomes a landscape you are walking through, rather than a prison you are trapped inside. This is the integration of wisdom. It isn't about becoming immune to life's roughness. It is about becoming kinder to the parts of yourself that feel that roughness the most. Many of us have spent years trying to fix ourselves through shame. We think that if we are hard enough on ourselves, if we are vigilant enough, we will finally arrive at a point of perfection. But shame is not a teacher. Shame is a wall. It cuts us off from the very awareness that would allow us to heal. To let go of this, we have to be willing to sit with the uncertainty of not knowing what the outcome will be. We have to be willing to risk the possibility that we are already whole right now, even in the middle of our mess, even in the middle of our tiredness. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care enough to stop harming yourself. You care enough to stop adding the second wound to the first. When you realize that the pressure you feel is mostly of your own making, the world starts to look a little different. The tasks you have to do tomorrow don't vanish, but they stop feeling like tests of your human worth. The mistakes you made in the past don't disappear, but they stop being the anchor that holds you in the dark. In a few moments, we will talk about how to bring this perspective into the actual, busy, modern moments of your daily life, how to hold this wisdom when the phone is ringing, when the emails are piling up, and when you feel that old, familiar tug of urgency. But for now, just let these thoughts rest. You don't have to change your life tonight. You only have to recognize that the way you have been holding your life is something you can choose to change, slowly and with immense kindness. Feel your body resting on the bed. You are not a project. You are not a draft that needs endless editing. You are a human being who deserves the same kindness you would offer to someone else who was hurting. If you saw a friend exhausted by the weight of their own expectations, you would tell them to stop. You would tell them they have done enough. Tonight, I am telling you the same. You have done enough. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to let the architecture of your life simply exist as it is, without your constant, frantic maintenance. There is a profound freedom in this admission. It is the freedom of the weaver who realizes that the tapestry does not have to be a masterpiece to be authentic. It is the freedom of the gardener who realizes that the earth does not need to be forced to be worthy of love. You are part of this world, not a separate entity trying to manage it. You are, and that is sufficient. As you breathe, let that sense of sufficiency sink into your bones. Let it settle into your muscles, letting the last remnants of the day's tension melt away into the quiet of the night. You are safe, you are held, and you are, in this very moment, exactly where you need to be. This wisdom is not meant to remain in the quiet of the mountain hut. It is meant to walk with you into the noise, the hurry, and the complexities of your day. It is easy to feel peaceful when you are lying in the soft dark, but the true test of this path is found in the moments when the world asks you to be anything but peaceful. Think of those times during your day when the urge to control becomes nearly impossible to resist. Perhaps you are waiting for a text message that feels like a verdict on your worth. Or you are sitting in a meeting, replaying a mistake from the morning and feeling the familiar sting of self-criticism. In those moments, your mind is behaving exactly like the apprentice in our story, gripping the shuttle with white knuckles, terrified that if you let go, the fabric of your life will unravel. When you feel the sudden, sharp pull of anxiety, that feeling of being behind, of not doing enough, of having to fix a relationship or a situation right now, that is your invitation to practice. You do not need to leave your life to find peace. You only need to notice the urge to control and realize that it is a choice, not a necessity. You can feel the urgency in your chest, but you do not have to obey it. You can take one slow, deliberate breath before you reach for your phone to check for reassurance. You can choose to be silent for a moment before you defend yourself in a conversation that is already spiraling. These small, quiet acts of discipline are the threads of your real-world practice. Many of us go through our days smiling while feeling heavy inside, trying to maintain a facade of competence because we believe that being tired or overwhelmed is a flaw we must hide. We check our phones, hoping for a sign that we are acceptable, that we are on the right path, that we are enough. But the reassurance you are looking for will never come from outside of yourself. It is a hollow victory, this seeking for external approval. The moment you put the phone down, the anxiety returns, because the source of your doubt has not been addressed. Instead of looking for comfort in the next notification or the next success, try this. When you feel that heavy, familiar ache of inadequacy, stop. Just stop. Feel your feet on the floor. Acknowledge that you are currently caught in the second wound, the judgment you are adding to the reality of the moment. Say to yourself quietly, I am allowed to be here, even with this. You don't have to fix the feeling. You don't have to resolve the situation instantly. You only have to witness your own humanity without flinching. You can care deeply about your work, your relationships, and your goals without holding them with such a desperate grip. You can be dedicated and disciplined without hating yourself when things go wrong. In fact, you will be much more effective and much more at peace if you can approach your life with the steady, patient hands of the weaver, rather than the frantic, exhausted hands of someone who believes their life is a problem to be solved. When you lie awake at night, tracing the outline of tomorrow's obligations, remember the seeds in the shed. Remind yourself that there are times in every life when we must be allowed to be nothing, to do nothing, and to be forgotten by the demands of the world so that we can find our own rhythm again. You are not a project that requires constant maintenance. You are a living, breathing part of this world, and you have the right to rest simply because you exist. If you find yourself comparing your life to others, measuring your thread against their cloth, stop and look at your own hands. Their story is not your story. Their loom is not your loom. You are weaving a pattern that is unique, one that requires its own pace, its own knots, and its own unique moments of light. To compare is to deny the value of your own experience. It is a way of looking at your own life through someone else's eyes, and that is a lens that will never show you the truth of who you are. Every time you choose to breathe instead of reacting, every time you choose to forgive yourself for a mistake instead of replaying it like a haunting memory, and every time you choose to rest instead of pushing yourself into exhaustion, you are building a new architecture. You are building a home for your own heart that is not dependent on the approval of others or the perfection of your work. You are learning that you can be imperfect and still be whole. You can be unfinished and still be worthy of peace. This does not mean that life becomes easy. It means you become a person who can carry the difficulty with a different kind of strength. You become someone who can meet the messiness of the world with a steady, kind awareness. You stop being the victim of your own thoughts and start being the guardian of your own peace. If you have felt guilty for resting, see that guilt for what it is. A remnant of the old belief that you must earn your existence through productivity. It is a lie. Your worth is not a currency you earn, it is a gift you are born with. You do not have to prove anything to the world, and you certainly do not have to prove anything to yourself. As you walk through your days, let this be your practice. Notice when you are gripping, and gently, with a soft exhale, release the tension. When you feel the weight of expectation, remember that the mountain does not ask the trees to hurry, and the stars do not ask the night to be anything other than dark. You are part of this natural unfolding rhythm. You are allowed to be here exactly as you are, with all your frayed edges and all your beautiful human knots. You are enough. You have always been enough. And as you prepare to move into these final moments of our time together, let the reality of that sink into your chest, a warm, steady light that stays with you even when the sun rises and the world begins its noise again. You are not the work you do. You are not the mistakes you made. You are the quiet, aware heart that is brave enough to rest. The air in this room has grown still, and the light from the moon has shifted, casting soft, silver shadows across the floor. You have walked a long path tonight, dear friend, through the quiet of the mountain hut and into the chambers of your own heart. You have looked at the threads you were holding so tightly, the knots of worry, the frayed edges of past mistakes, the desperate need to weave a life that was perfect before the sun could rise. And you have seen that it was never your duty to carry the weight of that tapestry alone. Let the shuttle go now. Let it rest on the floor, alongside the threads of your day, the plans of your tomorrow, and the questions that remain unanswered. You do not need to take them with you into this dream. They will be there if you need them, when the morning light touches the window. But for now, they are not your burden. You are simply a person, resting in the quiet, breathing in the cool night air. Feel the heaviness in your legs. Let it sink deep into the mattress as if the earth itself were rising up to meet you, holding you, supporting you, asking nothing in return. Feel the space behind your eyes, the place where the constant commentary of the mind has begun to fade. It is quiet there, it is spacious. And in that spaciousness, there is no need to prove anything, no need to perform, no need to be anything other than exactly who you are. Your breath is like the tide, coming in, going out, rhythmic and ancient. You do not need to command it, it knows the way. It knows how to keep you alive, how to keep you grounded, how to carry you safely into the deep, dark sea of rest. Each time you breathe out, imagine yourself setting down another piece of the armor you have been wearing. The need to be strong, the need to be certain, the need to be finished. Let it all slip away. It is safe to be soft. It is safe to be tired. It is safe to be finished with the work of this day. The wisdom we explored, the weaver's loom, the brittle seeds, the quiet art of non-resistance is settling into you now, not as an academic lesson, but as a gentle, reassuring truth. You are not a problem that needs to be solved. You are a part of the unfolding life of this world. The cracks in your vessel, the knots in your thread, The winters of your garden, they are not your disqualification. They are the spaces where grace has found a way to enter, and tonight, that grace is wrapping around you, a blanket of silence, a sanctuary of rest. There is a profound, holy beauty in the fact that you do not have to be perfect to be at peace. You do not have to be enough in the eyes of the world to be enough in the eyes of the universe. You are, and that is sufficient. Let that truth be the pillow beneath your head. Let it be the silence that cradles your thoughts. As your eyelids grow heavy and the room begins to blur at the edges, know that you are not losing yourself. You are returning to yourself. You are returning to the home that was never actually lost. The quiet awareness that was here before the worry, and will be here long after the thoughts have drifted away like smoke in the wind. The mountain pass is quiet now. The hut is dark. The loom is still. And you, dear friend, are free to let go. You are free to stop holding the thread. You are free to stop the frantic, internal search for a better version of yourself. The version you are is the only one that is needed. The version you are is the one that is loved. Rest now. Let the darkness be a cradle. Let the silence be a song. There is nothing left to decide, nothing left to fix, nothing left to achieve. The universe is holding you, the night is shielding you, and you are finally, completely, safe to sleep. Let the room become even quieter now, as if the whole world has lowered its voice for your sake. Let every unfinished thread remain exactly where it is. There is no need to gather it, tie it, repair it, or explain why it has not yet become something beautiful. Some threads only reveal their place in the pattern after a long season of rest, and tonight you are allowed to be in that season. Feel your hands becoming soft. They do not need to grip the shuttle anymore. They do not need to pull the fabric into shape. Your fingers can uncurl, your palms can open, and the small muscles that have been working all day to hold your life together can finally remember that they belong to a body, not a machine. You are allowed to be human here. You are allowed to be slow. You are allowed to be unfinished without turning that unfinishedness into shame. If a thought rises and says that tomorrow will demand too much from you, let that thought pass through the open window of your awareness. It may come with urgency, but urgency is not always truth. Sometimes urgency is only fear wearing a louder robe. You can hear it without obeying it. You can let it stand at the edge of the room while you remain here. Breathing gently, letting the night teach your nervous system that not every problem needs your hands around it. The loom is still. The bowl is cracked and beautiful. The seeds are resting in their dark, patient place beneath the soil. Nothing is failing simply because it is quiet. Nothing is lost simply because it is not finished. And you, dear friend, are not behind the rhythm of your own life. You are inside it. You are being carried by it, even now, as your breath slows and the edges of thought begin to blur. Let sleep come as a kind teacher, not as an escape. Let it place one gentle hand on the part of you that has tried so hard to be worthy, and let it whisper that worth was never waiting at the end of the work. It was here before the work began. It is here now, beneath the tiredness, beneath the striving, beneath the old fear that you must become perfect before you can be loved. And if even that truth feels too large to believe all at once, let it be small tonight. Let it be only one quiet breath, one softened hand, one moment where you stop turning against yourself. Even that is enough. Even one breath of kindness can begin to change the way the whole inner room feels. And if the peace you have been searching for was never something you had to earn, but something that was waiting for you to simply stop running, what if, in the very act of finally letting go, you discovered that the home you were looking for was the quiet awareness that never left you?